Good evening and welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix daily price change predictions video. My name is FPL Nacho and this is a series where we discuss potential FPL price changes to help you build that essential team value. Now, in this video, guys, of course, it is the international break. We all do hate it as FPL managers, but it doesn't mean that the FPL price changes are stopping anytime soon. And we have a few notable price rises and fallers that we need to discuss tonight, including a certain Man City fullback that had a bit of a stormer in game week 11. So, as always, guys, everything is taken from fantasyfootballfix.com, the leading FPL platform. So, if you want to improve that overall rank or win those mini leagues, be sure to head over to fantasyfootballfix.com or download the free app to enable push notifications. So, guys, without further ado, let's get started. Right, guys, we're going to kick this video off with our price predictor over on fantasyfootballfix.com to have a look at the potential FPL price changes going into tonight. And while it isn't as crazy as it has been over the last few days, really, obviously going into the international break, managers want to slow down and preserve those transfers. There are still a few notable changes tonight. And first of that is going to be Southampton's Livramento. Of course, the player that started the season at 4 million, likely to rise to 4.6 million tonight. His progress bar has exceeded 100%, now at 105.5%. And as you can see, that the progress is 0.6% per hour. That just shows the popularity of the player over the last few hours. And it's worth noting as well, with the international break, it is a popular time for managers to activate those wildcards, and it's worth remembering that wildcard transfers do not contribute towards FPL price changes. So that is always the case sometimes when you're looking at these price changes, wildcard transfers don't contribute. But second potential rise is going to be Man City's Cancelo off the back of that unbelievable performance in game week 11. I think it was a 14-point haul. Well done to those owners. And he is looking like he might rise to 6.5 million tonight, rising at 1.7% per hour. Of course, Man City getting back to their usual ways of keeping a clean sheet, and Cancelo offering that attacking potential in that Man City defence, which arguably the other three defenders don't offer. So the real obvious pick in that Man City team. And Troisard at Brighton, someone who's been a bit under the radar recently, as you can see, at 2.3% ownership, but potentially rising to 6.5% tonight, exceeding that 100% progress bar. He could definitely be someone to keep an eye out and someone we'll be looking at in the coming video at whether he is a viable option over the coming game weeks. And some notable potential price fallers tonight includes Azpilicueta at Chelsea. Again, this has been a player that has been hovering around the potential price fall for a few days now. And it's worth noting, of course, with the wildcards, this could impact that. Townsend at Everton potentially falling to 5.6 million tonight. Enjoyed a really good start to the season, but we said about it in previous videos, his underlying stats weren't going to be representative going forward, and that is shown recently with his form. And Grealish at Man City, obviously bench recently, not getting the game time I think managers are wanting to see, and falling to 7.7 million. Quite a clear, obvious move to Phil Foden might be in the back of those owners' minds. And another notable one is going to be Lukaku. Now, he is only just on the cusp of the 100% progress bar, potentially falling to 11.4 million. Now, of course, we don't know the situation on his injury right now. Hopefully, we get an update over the international break, but probably if you own him right now, it's worth holding until the end of this international break, really get an idea on where he stands in the Chelsea team. Because going forward at 11.5 million, only 9.4% ownership, he could prove to be a brilliant differential if he is proved fit for game week 12. But as I mentioned, guys, we're going to be focusing on some of these potential price rises tonight, and we're going to kick off with Man City's Cancelo. Right, guys, of course, with Cancelo potentially rising in price tonight and Livramento rising, and of course, the Chelsea defenders being the talk of the town for the last month, it seems, really, I've decided to bring up our fixed comparison matrix over on fantasyfootballfix.com to really delve into all five of these players, including Trent Alexander-Arnold, to compare them from game week 1 to game week 11, just to get an idea on how they are performing against one another, whether there's some clear standout options and how they are in terms of FPL value. Because, of course, we're looking at the likes of Trent at 7.7 million, but we have Tino Livramento sat here at 4.5 million. And of course, they all have played very different minutes. Cancelo at 978 in comparison to Chilwell's 450. So what I've done here is I've decided to filter it by average per game, just to get a bit of a clear indication on how they are performing when they are actually featuring for their teams. And it's worth mentioning as well, there's pros and cons to this. Of course, the players that are playing more minutes, you're going to get a bit more of a larger data size, probably a bit more of a consistent understanding of what they could produce going forward. Smaller sample sizes, of course, crazy things can happen over that period, probably less time to evaluate. So it's just worth noting that when we do compare the groups of players who have played significantly more minutes compared to the less. But first and foremost, it's worth noting that we have got it here as a projected points over the next 5 game weeks. So underneath the player's name, you can see there for Cancelo, he is predicted to score 26 points over the next 5 game weeks. Reece James at 20, Chilwell just ahead on 21.4, Trent leading the way on 27.7, and Livramento, as you would expect, being in a poorer defence on 13. So it's worth noting there that Trent is still the standout choice in regards to our projected points, but Cancelo only slightly behind on 26. So guys, when we come down here, I've decided to bring in some of the factors for us to conclude some of the stats. First and foremost, goals. We have got Chilwell leading the way on 0.6 goals per game. Obviously the average there. Reece James just behind on 0.5. And Trent Alexander-Arnold on 0.1, of course, picking up that goal in game week 11, that beautiful free kick. And FPL assist-wise as well, very, very close between the three here. 0.4 for both Cancelo, Reece James, and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Livramento 0.1 per game. So again, the James, Cancelo, and Trent Alexander-Arnold really winning the lead there. Touching the opposition box, interestingly, Chilwell is dominating in this area, 4.5 touches per game. Reece James on 3.3, and then we have the likes of Cancelo and Trent Alexander-Arnold on 2.5 and 2.4 respectively. And it's worth noting, we've seen in the way that Tuchel set up his size, really putting an emphasis on his wing-backs getting beyond those attackers and making those inverted runs into the box, as we've seen with Reece James's finish against Norwich, and of course a few Chilwell efforts that he's had. So that is definitely catering towards the way that Chelsea are playing with that formation. And in terms of shots, that's where Cancelo comes into his own at 2.4 per match. Only Chilwell getting the closest at 2 per match. So really there, we can see Cancelo coming into his own element there. And as we've seen in the Pep Guardiola side, really giving a license to go forward and really influence the attack in that final third. And I wanted to bring up the bonus points as well, because of course this is a great way of picking our players, because some players are bonus magnets, and that in particular goes to Trent Alexander-Arnold at 1.3 and Reece James at 1.3. Of course, both of our monster hauls over the last few game weeks, and that is no surprise that they are leading the way there. Livramento only 0.2 probably indicates the lower baseline and scoring that he does have, but still decent returns for a 4.5 million asset. And last, I just want to look at the clean sheets. Of course, Chilwell and James slightly different because they featured in different games, skewing it a little bit there. But Cancelo at 0.6, Reece James at 0.4, and Chilwell, Trent at 0.6. But again, Livramento doing a great job at 0.5. So what we want to look at here, guys, is Cancelo, who's potentially rising in price tonight, the best asset to go to? Well, of course, our projected points has him as the second best option going forward. And I think if I was in a position right now where I was bringing in either a Man City or a Chelsea defender, I really do think that Cancelo will still be the priority for me going forward. Now, of course, with Pep, Zinchenko can be a rotation for him, but we've seen Cancelo play right back in the past. I personally think that he is no less of a rotation risk than Reece James or Chilwell. So for me, I think Cancelo should be a priority for managers ahead of the Chelsea defenders. And we all know that Trent Alexander-Arnold offers amazing value going forward. Livramento at 4.5 million. Again, you haven't missed the boat if you didn't get him at 4 million. I still think there's great value there. Clearly the preferred right back. And going forward, as you can see, 13 projected points is still a great total for a player at 4.5 million. Okay, last up, guys, we're going to be looking at Brighton's talisman, Leandro Troisard. Of course, picking up a goal in game week 11 and probably arguably Brighton's best player so far this season, is somebody that has completely been flying under the radar so far. I believe below a 3% ownership, so a real great differential for some managers. And as I mentioned, predicted to rise in price tonight, so some managers are looking at him potentially for the coming foreseeable future. And no, you're not seeing double here, guys. On fantasyfootballfix.com, I've brought up the player heat maps as I wanted to compare Troisard versus Troisard over different periods of this season. So from game weeks 1 to 9 on the right hand side there, I've decided to compare it because he operated in a bit of a different position alongside Neil Maupay. And on the left hand side, we got it from game weeks 10 to 11, where he's operated more as a number 9 in the Brighton team at the expense of Neil Maupay. Now, it's worth mentioning, guys, as I mentioned before, such a small sample size for only 2 game weeks. We can't really read too much into the conclusions here, but I just want to look at if there's any clear sort of developments in this sort of underlying stats, the touch heat maps, and importantly, what we can come to the conclusion here is even if he does revert back to his original position alongside Neil Maupay, is the touch heat map and the underlying stats justifying potentially paying that price for Troisard going forward? So as you can see here, in the 2 games that he has featured, he's averaging 9.5 points per game in game weeks 10 and 11. Compared to game weeks 1 to 9, he averaged 3.6 points per game. So probably not the best points per game in that duration from game week 1 to 9, as you can see there. And what we're going to come down into the touch map section. And as we can see, of course, over 9 game weeks, we're going to have a lot more data. And naturally, the heat map is going to show us a lot more information. As you can see there from game weeks 1 to 9 on the right-hand side, plenty of touches in around the middle third. But impressively, what I like to see is some touches within the opposition 18-yard box. As you can see, predominantly operate on that left-hand side there. I like to see what I'm seeing on this touch map. He's getting around and being a real busy player in that team. But importantly, getting those touches within the box. Now, when we look at the other side, when he operated as a number 9, we see that those touches within the box still exist, and that's what you naturally would want to expect with him being the furthest player in the team and operating as the number 9, but still drifting out wide on that left-hand side and getting those touches. Of course, with Maupay probably being brought on as a sub, that might influence the change of the position there, but for the majority of the time, he was operating as that number 9 and still consistent with his touches there, getting in and around the box. And we come down here into the actual underlying stats. I want to bring it down all the way here into the average statistics per 90, just to get a real idea on how he's operating. Now, as I mentioned, the left-hand side shows us him from game weeks 10 and 11. Such a small sample size. We're not expecting this to continue as a trend going forward, but it's worth noting he did play Liverpool away and Newcastle in them 2 fixtures, and it's worth mentioning that he did score a penalty in that fixture against Newcastle, which is naturally going to bring up his expected goals in comparison to previous games where he didn't take a penalty. But it's worth noting as well, while Maupay is out of the team, Troisard remains the number 1 penalty taker in that team with him out of it. So that's something to remember as an asset if it is a continued trend going forward in this Brighton team. Now, as we can see, per 90, 1 per 90 for Troisard when he is operated in game weeks 10 and 11. Naturally, why managers are being attracted to him. But the expected goals at 0.74, again, penalties are skewing that one, so we can't read too much into that. But the shots at 3.5, impressive to see. And shots on target, 2 per 90, which is always what you want to see. And in the box, as I mentioned, guys, he's getting plenty of touches in the box, which is great to see. And at 2.5 of those shots in the box, exactly what you want to see if he is operating as a number 9. Now, when we compare it to him between game weeks 1 and 9, this is where I really want to read into, because if he does start operating back in his original position, these are the stats that we might become accustomed to. Goals 0.12 per 90, again, probably not the level you want to see for an asset around that price, especially with the likes of Smith Rowe operating better and at a cheaper price. Expected goals 0.14 per 90, again, not the worst, but nothing groundbreaking. His shots 2.78 and shots in the box at 1.5, so a little bit less, but again, over a larger sample size. So my thoughts on Troisard are, I would probably hold on bringing him in. Brighton have a mixed bag of fixtures coming up, and I think it does really depend on whether he remains as a number 9. Looking at these stats over 9 game weeks, I don't think he's necessarily an asset that you want to rush into your team. So I would probably say hold on Troisard, but if he does continue to play in that forward line, then he could be an interesting asset. Right, guys, that's going to wrap up today's Fantasy Football Fix price change predictions video. I really hope that has provided some value going into the international break. And of course, the recommendation is to always hold that transfer throughout the international break just to avoid any potential injuries to your teams. But of course, if you are getting priced out of any potential transfers, then you definitely need to head over to the price predictor over on fantasyfootballfix.com so you can monitor those very closely. Don't miss out, because that 0.1 could be the big difference between affording a player and losing out on a player. So all the links are in the bio, guys, especially downloading our free app, which enables push notifications so you don't miss any of those potential transfers. And as always, guys, if you want to support the channel, be sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button, and we're going to be slowing down the content a little bit over the international break, but we're still going to be bringing you plenty of videos. So be sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. So guys, we will see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.